Thank you for having me here. Thank you for the invitation. It's my great pleasure to be here with you. Actually, when we talking about geothermal back to 5 years ago, I don't realize that geothermal is so close to me. You know, in the form of a hot spring, you know that, right? Geothermal heating is being used by Chinese for such a long time. And in history, you know, Qin Shi Huang, the first empire, unified China, and he even built a fancy palace to enjoy the hot spa and offer him all kinds of rejuvenating treatment and therapy. And then there's another lady, we call it notarized concubines in Tang Dynasty. She enjoyed the hot spring a lot. So even the poets and then the painter at her time led so many artworks about her and the hot spring. But anyway, those two people didn't have a very happy ending in their life. So I guess this is why in China, hot spring or even geothermal energy has never been raised attention for Chinese leader or ruler. So when even in 1970, the then Minister of Geology, Dr. Li Shiguang, tried to propose to build the first geothermal power plant in China, he got to leverage his political influence in China to gain the support from Chairman Mao, and that's how the first geothermal power plant was built in Guangdong. So, even though there's a relatively abundant geothermal resource in China, but China is lagging behind than other geothermal-rich countries. There's a number, like say, in 2010, China was only ranked 18th in terms of installed geothermal power capacity. In 2015, China consumes about 20 million tons of coal equivalent of a geothermal resource for heating, power generation, and other uses. But just like Peter just mentioned, that policy is always the driver for the geothermal development. So the wind is going to change in China. In order to reduce the carbon emission and improve the air quality, the National Development and Reform Commission, China Economy Planner, mentioned the guidelines for geothermal energy for the first time in its 13th five-year plan. That was the first time ever. So according to the plan, China promoted the use of geothermal to reduce carbon emission and improve air quality in Beijing, Tianjin, and Hebei area. China will also provide policy support to boost geothermal energy exportation and consumption. And China is expected to more than triple its current consumption of geothermal energy to 72 million tons of coal equivalent. And it accounts about 1.5% of the country's total energy consumption. So, ladies and gentlemen, in another word, actually we are talking about 15 billion Canadian dollar investment opportunity in China. So a pilot project has been successfully implemented in China right now. I don't know if you're familiar with China's, the map of China and the logo. So 2 kilometers away from Beijing. Earlier this year, the government just announced to form a new special economy zone, which named Xiong'an New Economy Zone. And that area is one of the few areas in China. 100% of the house heating is from geothermal. So, and from the beginning, President Xi Jinping saying that the area has to be clean and ecological friendly. So it pointed to in the further development for the geothermal technology, and also probably set a model for creating strategic management for cleaning up the polluted air in China. So since I'm going to introduce, I'm from China. My company was a utility company. We provide energy to the end user, most as an industry end user and commercial end user. So from the industry point of view, I would like to share some of my experience in China. So when we're talking about government support, we're always thinking of subsidy. But actually, from my point of view, subsidy has never been enough. Because the subsidy is good because it will provide some good reason for the entrepreneur or another, business player. They pursue this business. But subsidy alone is definitely not enough. So in my experience, there's once of the time I've talked to some of the government officials in China. So they told me that geothermal is not a clean energy. I'm kind of surprised, right? But I figure out the reason is some of those companies, when they reject the water back to the underground, and they didn't have the specific guideline to follow. And at the end of the day, they pollute the underground water and cause the subsidence. That's why most of the government, they don't like geothermal in China. It was sad for the business, for the industry. So from my point of view, I think there's more important than giving the subsidy to the company. I think set up a clear guideline or code is really important in China. So, and one more thing is, when we're talking about the government regulation to provide the guideline, and this is not only married to the energy provider. It should be provide a guideline to the end user. For example, this is one of the projects my company is operating and manager in China. We provide heating and cooling to the hotel for an area cover around, I think is close to 92 square meters. For the whole area, we supply the heat and hot water and cooling for the hotel and the residential customer as well. So what we are doing over there is we work with the local government to put out a mandate for the end users' obligation to use the clean energy for cooling and heating. And also, there's another example, and the government, this is what we are trying to do, is the government put out another policy to encourage the developer to use the clean energy, like say solar panel. The government will slightly increase the plus ratio when the developer commit to use clean energy. Okay, so I think those is a kind of good move for the government, from the government side, to encourage this industry, not just get the subsidy. So there's another thing, because today when I hear talking, I listen, there's some professor, they mentioned that, oh, we should review the business model, right? And I think there's another things in China happens right now, and the government usually adapt the business model, what we call PPP, public and private partnerships, right? Okay, so in China, this is the way the government try to encourage the industry, and the government will act as the guarantor for the project financing. And at the meantime, so to give the service provider the concession right, so they can guarantee the demand. Since, as we know that there's the intense upfront cost for the geothermal developments, right, for the geothermal. So if we can guarantee the demand from the first beginning, like say we had the end user obligation, and then we had the government as the guarantor for the project financing, that will be more easier for us to develop this the project. And at the end of the day, can encourage the development of the geothermal industry. Okay, so, and at the end, I think this is another advisor, like say, Chinese government is trying to set up a nationwide carbon emission exchange. I think that is a good move to encourage the use of geothermal as well, and also another kind of clean energy. And also, I think the public education is really important, just like the example I mentioned earlier, that the government officer will think that geothermal is not clean, but actually geothermal is a clean energy, but depends on how we use it, right? And so I know most of you guys have been here all days. I don't want to keep you that long. So as closing, I'm really appreciate WISE to host this, and appreciate you guys listen to my ideas. Okay, and I think this is really important for set up some international collaboration, and then had opportunity to exchange. And appreciate that, and thank you so very much. Thanks.